Alright, let's continue. Crockett 36 here. And general combat sequence. Love letter to access and allies. Global 40. Place units along the battle strips. Submarine, surprise attack, or submerge. Sea battles only. Attacking units fire. Defending units fire. Remove defender casualties. Press attack or retreat. Conclude combat. Strip 1. Place units along the battle strip. The battle strip has two sides labeled attacker, defender. Place all the attacking and defending land, sea, and air or air units from the battle onto their respective sides, aligned with the numbered columns that contain those units' names and silhouettes. Facilities don't participate in general combat as they may be attacked or damaged only by strategic or tactical bombing raids. The number in a unit's column identifies that unit's attack or defense value. An attacking or defending unit must roll off its column's attack or defense value number or less in order to score a hit. What is this? What is this here? Alright. Some units, such as transports, attacking aircraft carriers, defending AAA units, have no combat value and are not represented on the battle strip. Place these units beside the battle strip as they are still participants in the battle and may still be taken as casualties. In a sea battle, place any cargo, whether your own unit or an ally's, beside the transport ship or on the aircraft carrier, guest air units, that is carrying it. Cargo doesn't roll attacks, nor can be taken as a hit. It's lost. It's lost with the ship carrying it if that ship is destroyed. If you are attacking in a sea zone that already contained friendly units, your allies' units are not placed along the battle strip, but remain out of play for this turn. Submarine, surprise strike, or submerge. This step is specifically to attacking and defending submarines. Before the general sea battle takes place, both attacking and defending submarines can choose to either make a surprise strike, die roll, or submerge. A player may choose to submerge all, some, or none of his or her submarines. However, if the opposing side is a destroyer in the battle, the attacking or defending submarines can't submerge or make a surprise strike. Combat proceeds normally with your submarines firing along with your other units in step 3 or 4. Attacking or defending submarines that choose to submerge are immediately removed from the battle strip and return to the game board in the contested sea zone, removing them from the remaining battle sequences. Note: decisions on whether attacking or defending submarines will fire or submerge must be made before any dice are rolled by either side. The attacking player decides first. Each attacking submarine conducting a surprise strike rolls 1 die. Attacking submarines that roll a 2 or less score a hit. After attacking player has rolled for all attacking submarines, the defender chooses 1 sea unit. Submarines can't hit any air units for each hit scored and moves it behind the casualty strip. Note: undamaged capital ships that are hit only once are not removed. Then each defending submarine conducting a surprise strike rolls 1 die. Defending submarines that roll a 1 score a hit. After the defending player has rolled for all defending submarines, the attacker chooses 1 sea unit for each hit scored and removes it from play. Note: the undamaged capital ships that are hit only once are not removed. Note: in both cases, attacking or defending transports can be chosen as casualties only if there are no other eligible units. Submerged submarines can't be chosen as casualties since they have been removed from the battle. Once all attacking or defending submarines that conduct a surprise strike have fired, the casualties they have generated are removed from the board, and this step is over for this round of combat. As long as there are attacking and or defending submarines and no opposing destroyers, this step is repeated during each round of combat. Each hit made during this step that don't destroy units, such as battleships or carriers, remain in effect until they are repaired. Any hits made remain in effect until they are repaired. Roll 1 die for each attacking unit with an attack value that didn't fire or submerge in step 2. Roll for units with the same attack value at the same time. For example, roll all units with an attack value of 3 at the same time. An attacking unit scores a hit if you roll its attack value or less. After the attacking player has rolled for all attacking units, the defender chooses 1 unit for each hit scored and moves it behind the casualty strip. All units behind the casualty strip will return fire in step 4. As many hits as possible must be assigned. For instance, if 1 cruiser and 2 submarines attack a carrier with a fighter and score 3 hits, the defender must assign the cruiser hit to the fighter and their submarine hits to the carrier. The defender may not assign the cruiser hit to the carrier, as the subs cannot hit the fighter and 1 sub hit would be lost. Defending units. Roll 1 die for each unit with a defense value, including units behind the casualty strip that didn't fire or submerge in step 2. Roll for units with the same defense value at the same time. A defending unit scores a hit if you roll its defense value or less. After the defending player has rolled for each defending unit with a defense value, the attacker chooses 1 unit for each hit scored and removes it from play. As many hits as possible must be assigned. For instance, if 1 cruiser and 1 submarine are defending against 1 destroyer and 1 fighter, the defender scores 2 hits. The attacker must assign the sub-hit to the destroyer and the cruiser hit to the fighter. The attacker may not assign the cruiser hit to the destroyer, as the sub cannot hit the fighter and its hit would be lost. Specific to sea battles. In both Step 3 and 4, submarines that fired in Step 2 cannot fire again during the same combat round. If there is an enemy destroyer in the battle, submarines fire in Step 3 or 4 rather than Step 2. Remember that in sea battles, hits from air units cannot be assigned to submarines unless there is a destroyer present that is friendly to the air units in the battle, and hits cannot be assigned to transports only if there are no other eligible units. Remove the defender units that are behind the casualty strip from play. Note, after casualties are removed, it might be necessary to reevaluate certain units' capabilities that depend on the presence or absence of other units. For example, infantry units might no longer be supported by artillery units, or submarines might no longer have their ability canceled by enemy destroyers that have been removed. These changes will take effect in the following combat round. Step 6. Press attack or retreat. Combat rounds 2 to 5 continue until one of the following conditions. 2 conditions occur in this order. Attacker and or defenders lose all units. Once all units can either fire or retreat on one or both sides have been destroyed, the combat ends. If the player has combat units remaining along the battle strip, that player wins the combat. Players that have units remaining along the battle strip return those units to the contested space on the board. In a sea battle, if both sides have only transports remaining, the attacker's transports can remain in the contested sea zone or retreat per the rules in condition B below, if possible. In a sea battle, if a defender has only transports remaining and the attacker still has units capable of attacking, the defender transports are all destroyed along with their cargo. You don't have to continue rolling dice until all the transports receive hits. This will speed up combat. This also occurs if the only combat units remaining can't hit each other. For example, if the defender has only transports and submarines remaining, and the attacker has only air units remaining, the air units and submarines can't hit each other, so the transports are defenseless. At this point, defenseless transports are all destroyed along with their cargo. Attacking transports are not usually considered defenseless, since they generally have the option of retreating. If you can't retreat, they are treated the same way as defending transports. Destroying defenseless transports in this way still counts as combat for the purpose of offshore bombardment and similar rules. That's interesting. Attacking transports are not usually considered defenseless, since they generally have the option of retreating. If they can't retreat, they are treated the same way as defending transports. That is Huh. Destroying defenseless transports in this way still counts as combat for the purpose of offshore bombardment and similar rules. Condition B. The attacker, never the defender, can retreat during this step. Moving all attacking land and sea units in that combat that are on the battleship to single adjacent friendly space from which at least one of the attacking land or sea units moved. In the case of sea units, the space must have been friendly at the start of the turn. All such units must retreat together to the same territory or sea zone, regardless of where they came from. Retreating air units remain in the contested space temporarily. They complete their retreat movement during the non-combat phase using the same rules as an air unit involved in a successful attack. After one round of attacks, the attacking player decides to retreat, but his destroyer must retreat to one of the sea zones that the attacking forces came from. If you win a combat as the attacker in a territory and you have one or more surviving land unit there, you take control of it. Otherwise, it remains in the defender's control. If all units on both sides were destroyed, the territory remains in the defender's control. Sea units cannot take control of a territory. They must remain at sea. Air units cannot capture a territory. If your attack force has only air units remaining, you cannot occupy the territory you attacked, even if there are no enemy land units. Air units must return to a friendly territory or carrier during the non-combat phase. Until then, they stay at the space where they fought. If you have captured the territory, place your control marker on the territory and adjust the national production level. Your national production increases by the value of the captured territory. The loser's production decreases by the same amount. Any industrial complex, airbase, or naval base located in the captured territory is not controlled by your side. See liberating a territory on the next page. If you capture an industrial complex, you cannot mobilize new units there until your next turn. If you capture a major industrial complex, it is immediately downgraded to a minor one. If you capture an airbase or naval base, you cannot use the added flight or sea movement or receive repairs until your next turn. Any damage previously inflicted on a facility remains in place until it is repaired. Any damage markers beyond beyond 6 on a former major industrial complex are removed. If you capture a territory that was originally controlled by another member of your side, you liberate your territory. You didn't take control of it. Instead, the original controller regains the territory and the national protection level is adjusted. Any industrial complex, airbase, or naval base in that territory reverts to the original controller of the territory. A major industrial complex that was downgraded to a minor upon capture is not automatically upgraded upon liberation. It remains minor until the original owner upgrades it. All right, let me take a few minutes to just note some things about the combat. I am definitely in favor of, I heard about it first with Young Grasshoppers Deluxe, but I would think that there are some forces that should actually be attackers that don't get a return fire. And I love targeted attacks. So, for instance, submarines would not attack. I don't know if I've said this before. Maybe I did. Submarines would not attack all the destroyers up until they finally make their way to the carriers. No, submarines would try their best to hit the carriers for a target attack. Maybe they do that targeted attack and they have to get a 1 in order to succeed on attack. Maybe the destroyers get a shot at discovering the subs. Like air CAP, what is that called? Air patrol, basically, is what it's called. The destroyers would not actually be part of battles, but would actually be put on like a CAP, like a sonar post, and they would be so enthralled with that they they wouldn't necessarily be assigned something else. They would be strictly for discovering submarines. And maybe upon a roll of a 2 or a 1, they discover the submarine, and then the submarine is just a regular submarine. So that's just an idea. Then tactical bombers, again, dive bombers at midway would not have destroyed all of the destroyers before attacking the carriers. So again, perhaps on a die roll of 1 or 2, they actually hit the carriers. Unless they're going for the lowest level of attackers, the destroyers, or whatever's in those lower spaces. So also artillery. I would think artillery would hit things from a distance, and then as the attack commenced, you wouldn't. The artillery would be less effective, obviously. Perhaps reducing it from a 2 to a 1, because you're just not going to use it a lot. Because your forces might be killed as well. So yeah, first strike capabilities for artillery, attack bombers, and for bombardments, obviously, also, as well as submarines. Alright, and where was I wonder? I am down here. Alright, so liberating a territory, capturing, turn. If the original controllers of the power whose territory you just liberated, capital, is in the enemy hands at the end of the turn in which you would otherwise have liberated the territory, you capture the territory instead. You adjust your national production level, and you can use any industrial complex, air base, naval base there until the original controller's capital is liberated. The capturing player can't use these newly captured facilities until the player's next turn. Capturing and liberating capitals. If a power captures territory containing an enemy capital, Washington, London, Moscow, etc., follow the same rules as for captured territories. Add the captured territory's income value to your national production level. In addition, you collect all unspent IPCs from the treasury of the original controller of the captured capital. For example, if Germany captures Russia and the Soviet Union as unspent IPCs, those IPCs are immediately transferred to the German player. You collect these IPCs even if your own capital is in enemy hands. When capturing the last remaining Axis capital, signifying Allied victory, you still add the captured territory income value to your national production level, and you collect any unspent IPCs its power may have. The Axis player will have until the beginning of your power's next turn using their existing forces to try to liberate one of the Axis capitals. The original control of the captured territory is still captured capital is still in the game, but cannot collect income from any territory. He or she still controls and can't buy new units. The player skips all but the combat move and conduct combat and non-combat move phases until the capital is liberated. If that power or one of its on its side liberates the capital, the original controller can once again collect income from territories he or she controls, including territories reverting control to him or her. If the capital is captured, the industrial complex, air base, naval base in that capital territory revert ownership to the original control of the capital. Other territories, industrial complexes, air bases, naval bases that were originally controlled by the newly liberated capital's controller are currently in the hands of friendly powers. Also revert control immediately. You don't collect IPCs from the controlling power when you liberate a capital. For instance, if Germany's player liberates Rome from the United Kingdom player, the UK player doesn't surrender any IPCs. Capturing a victory city. Germany and Italy win the game by capturing and controlling 8 victory cities. Players should keep a close eye on the progress of the Axis and the number of victory cities in which they have controlled. If the Axis players control these victory cities continuously for one complete round to play, they win the war, provided that they also control at least one of their own capitals at the end of the round. Okay, let's. I got some beefs with this stuff. Not a big fan of victory cities. They are just a way to speed up the game, and they honestly pervert the game significantly. Also, the booty from capitals perverts the game. I just don't think you should get the whole amount. I think you should get the amount of the capital. So, for instance, I believe Germany is 8. You would get $8. And if there is an industrial complex still in the hands, I would say the capital moves to that other place. So, for instance, if Moscow is captured and yet Volgograd is not, then the capital of Russia would move there. So, and I forget, Moscow might were 6. So, not a big fan of that, especially doing it multiple times. Like, it just makes it so unworth it to liberate France. Who would do that? Especially, when you liberate France, you have to be sure it's not going to be taken back, because you're just giving them more money. And doing that with West Germany right there is pretty sketchy, pretty highly improbable for most games. So, not a big fan of these rules. Really, rules which, twist the game quite a bit out of shape. So, I wouldn't say you get capital. You only get the capital of the capital's money. And I definitely don't think you should be getting. I guess you could get it every turn if that was the case, where it was only the IPC value of the capital itself. Certainly, if there was another industrial base that was not being threatened, obviously it would make a lot of sense to for the Russian player, for instance, to move his money and gold out of the capital, to hide it, destroy it, whatever. And that's what happened in real life. They found millions in Berlin, but they didn't find the gross result of the gross national product. That would have been a lot more than millions. Yeah. I do like War Room's way of doing it. It's just much better. So yeah. All right, let's go to and by the way, this is so. I mean, to still have the victory cities and not provide the same kind of option victory cities for the allies. I mean, again, just Axis wet dream, right? So, which I get. I get it. Units on the same side can share territory, C-zone, constituting a multinational force. Such forces can defend together, but they cannot attack together. This doesn't mean powers can share income. Only the powers that control the territory collects income for that territory. A multinational force cannot attack the same space together because each power moves and attacks with its own units only on its own turn. Any unit in a C-zone in which a battle occurs that belongs to an ally of the attacker, other than cargo on an attacker's ship, can't participate in the battle in any way. Such units cannot be taken as losses in the sea combat and have no effect on defending submarines. Any unit in a sea zone in which a battle occurs that belongs to an ally of the attacker can't participate in the battle. And an attacking fighter or tactical bomber can launch from an aircraft carrier owned by an ally, but the ally's carrier can't move until its owner's turn. Similarly, an attacking carrier can carry an ally's fighter or tactical bomber as cargo, but the ally's air unit can't participate in an attack by that carrier. An attacking land unit can assault a coastal territory from an ally's transport, but only on the attacking land unit owner's turn. When a space constituting multinational forces attacked, all its units defend together. If the defending units belong to the powers under the control of different players, those players mutually determine the casualties. If they can't agree, the attacker chooses. Transporting multinational forces. Transports belonging to a friendly power can load and offload your land units as long as both powers are at war. This is a three-step process. Load your land units aboard the friendly transport on your turn. Transport's controllers move it or not. On that player's turn, you offload your land units on your next turn. Okay, so again, War Room is just so superior to this. This is ridiculous. You really should be able to assign, as it happened. Eisenhower did not, they did not stagger the attack. They all attacked together, Canadian, English, and American forces at D-Day. And so should be the case here. You should be able to put your forces under the command of a nation and all attack together. It really just makes it very hard to make any progress. For instance, in the Pacific, where you can come up with a substantial defensive force, but almost, unless you were doing a full pack build, you're never going to be able to attack. Even though you can have a force that's pretty much equal to a Japanese, it'll be a defensive force that you have to try to provoke an attack from. It's just silly. It's not the way it happened in war. It's not the way it would happen in war. It just didn't. So, it's just silly. Yeah, it's just silly. Non-combat. So what do we got? 26 minutes. I'm going to try a little more. In this phase, you can move any of your units that didn't move in a combat or participate in a combat during your turn. You can also land all your planes that participated in and survived the combat. Conduct combat phase. This is a good time to gather your forces, especially to fortify vulnerable territories or to reinforce units at the front. Your land and sea units can move a number of spaces up to their move values. Your air units can move a number of spaces up to their move values, less the number of spaces they might have moved during the combat move phase. Air units that did not move at all during the combat phase may use their entire movement allowance in this phase. Only air units and submarines can move through hostile spaces during this phase. Stranded defending air units also land during this phase. These are carrier air units whose aircraft carriers have been damaged or destroyed in a combat or scrambled. Air units or air fighter interceptors whose original territory is now under enemy control. These units are allowed movement up to one space to find a friendly territorial carrier in which to land. If no landing space can be found, they are lost. This movement occurs before the action player makes any non-combat moves. And again, what we have here is the superiority of War Room. Let's see, what am I thinking of here? Air units landing. It just fled my brain. All right, let's keep going. A land unit can move into any friendly or friendly neutral territory, including territories that were captured in the current turn. It cannot move into or through a hostile territory, not even one that contains no combat units but is enemy controlled, or an unfriendly neutral or strict neutral territory. If your power isn't at war, you cannot move your units into territories belonging to another friendly power or friendly neutral. This is the only phase in which AA guns can move. I think that's a little silly myself. I think they should be able to move in the attack phase and be used against aircraft, by the way, in the attack. An air unit must move end its move in an eligible landing space. Air units can move in any territory that was friendly but not friendly neutral to start. Air units can land in any territory that was friendly but not friendly neutral at the start of the current turn. That's weird. I've seen that move take place in Java a ton. Thought it just said you could. If you can't move, a land unit can move into any friendly or friendly neutral territory, including territories that were captured in the current turn. Friendly neutral territory. Air units cannot land in any territory that was friendly. It can land, but not friendly neutral. That's weird. What the heck does that mean? Okay, someone knows. I'm assuming you can land in Java since the computer lets me. Only fighters and tactical bombers can land in a sea zone with a friendly carrier present. A landing spot must be available on the carrier. Additionally, a fighter or tactical bomber can land in a sea zone, even a hostile one, that is adjacent to an industrial complex you own if you will be mobilized in an aircraft carrier that you previously purchased in that zone during the mobilized new units phase. In order for a fighter or tactical bomber to land on an existing carrier, both units must end their movement in the same sea zone. You must have a carrier remain in place, or be mobilized, new carriers only, to pick up a fighter or tactical bomber that would end its non-combat move in a sea zone. You cannot deliberately move an air unit out of range of a potential safe landing space. Air units that cannot move to an eligible landing space by the end of the non-combat move are destroyed. This includes stranded defending air units. See above. No air unit can move in any territory that was not friendly at the start of your turn. Can land, including any territory that was just captured or converted from friendly neutral by your turn. If your power isn't an aura, you cannot move your air units, territories, or onto aircraft carriers belonging to another friendly power. That makes sense. Sea units can move through any friendly sea zone. It cannot move into or through hostile sea zones. Unlike other sea units, submarines can move through and even into hostile sea zones in the non-combat move. However, a submarine must end its movement when it enters a sea zone containing one or more enemy destroyers. Transports can move to friendly coastal territories and load or offload cargo unless they land loaded, moved, offloaded, or were involved in combat during the combat move or combat phase. Aircraft carriers can move to sea zones to allow friendly fighters or tactical bombers to land. They must move there, range permitting. If they didn't move in the combat move phase and the friendly sea zone is the only valid landing zone for the air units, they must move there, range permitting. If they didn't move in the combat move phase and the friendly sea zone is the only valid landing zone for the air unit. An aircraft carrier and a fighter and tactical bomber must end their moves in the same sea zone in order for the air unit to land on a carrier. Okay. Let's see. C units. I'm going to do C units. It cannot move into or through a hostile sea zone. Okay. Alright, that makes sense. Alright, I'm going to call that a day at 33. We'll get to the rest later. Trying to think of what I was thinking with this this landing of the planes thing. Something I didn't like about it. Spaces, move value, move your units, you land your planes. Oh, what I was thinking was we just have the unlimited ability to move every piece on the Axis and Allies. And again, War Room just does it so much better. The example here would be Montgomery and Patton. There was not enough fuel for them to do both, and Eisenhower gave the oil to Montgomery. So I would say there is and should be a limit to the number of territories that receive non-combat ability. I would say both combat and non-combat. I think it's superior. I think you could come up with a number. Say, I'm just looking at the board right now, and Germany has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces to begin with. So maybe you can't move maybe it's like a 50%, or if you include C zones. Yeah, so I just think that it should be limited. I'm not exactly sure how to go about limiting it, but it should be limited. All right, I'm going to talk about mobilization next time, which should be cool, and collecting income. Those are some thoughts about this wonderful game of ours, Global 1940.